So I'm delighted to introduce our last but definitely not least speaker, Ossian McAleece, who is the district organizer and student officer of the Young Communist League Southeast. They are also an elected member of the East Sussex Youth Cabinet and a lifelong communist. So let's give Ossian a very warm welcome.
First of all, I'd just like to say how proud I am of this event. I remember some months ago in the summer at Harry Pollock School when I first suggested, after Keith's talk on his visit to Korea then, that we should hold an event celebrating the 80th anniversary of the Workers' Party of Korea and celebrating the Korean people's struggle. To think that I would be invited to speak at that event, someone who hasn't been alive as long as some of our comrades like Keith have been visiting the DPRK and hasn't nearly the authority as some of our comrades from the embassy like Kim. And to think that we would have so many people here, it fills me with pride for how much we've organised here, though of course it isn't not nearly enough. But to get on to what I'm actually here to talk about, I think while I don't have the seniority in experience or in age as some of our other speakers, one thing that I do uniquely have among our speakers is a experience of the modern British youth. And the youth today is something that no one can deny the revolutionary potential of. Comrade Kim Il-sung knew this well. In 1945, 80 years ago, he wrote in an article titled "The Present Tasks of the South Korean Youth Movement" that, quote, "If you work well among the young people and arouse them to activity, you will have nothing to fear. If you organize and educate them properly, they will display strength enough even to move a mountain," end quote. And mountains they have moved. Every day we hear of another youth movement. In Nepal, the youth overturned the whole social order essentially overnight. We saw scenes that many would think unimaginable. Parliaments torched and politicians dragged through the streets for corruption, with the youth overwhelming the police entirely. It looked like scenes out of a Western caricature of Mao's Cultural Revolution, far from the political placidity, the nothing ever happens attitude that many approach the 21st century with. Right now, Madagascar's youth, arm in arm with their military, have overthrown the previous president, André Rajoelina, very French-aligned, and are setting about establishing a new chapter in the nation's turbulent history. At the same time, in the national liberation struggle of Palestine, the youth and young students play key roles in resistance forces across the political spectrum. Wherever there is revolutionary upheaval, there is too the youth. The Korean Revolution is no exception to this. In 1930, Comrade Kim Il-sung wrote on the tasks of Korean revolutionaries that they had to, quote, "form the Korean Revolutionary Army out of young communists who had been educated and trained in revolutionary organizations, including the Young Communist League," which would go on to help form the Democratic Youth League, and the Anti-Imperialist Youth League, end quote. The patriotic and democratically minded Korean youths played an integral role in the Korean Revolution and in the revolutionary nation building that followed. The Korean Revolution empowered all Koreans, and especially the youths, as they are the new generation and the continual inheritors of the revolutionary society the revolution built, to seize in both hands their own destiny, and granted them a role in governing the country so direct it would seem impossible here in the UK. This can be seen particularly in the role of the aforementioned Democratic Youth League. The DYL, formed in 1945 with the help of and staffed primarily by cadres of the Korean Young Communist League, united the anti-feudal, anti-imperialist and pro-democracy youths behind the revolutionary cause of nation building under the Workers' Party of Korea. They were involved in all levels of governance in revolutionary Korea, and as Comrade Kim Il-sung wrote, quote, "In North Korea, the youth are directly involved in political life and play an important role in the people's government organs. The number of DYL members elected to the People's Committees, the local organs of governance in Korea, at all levels was in 1947 over 18,800, which accounted for 43% of all the People's Committee members. Quality of life for the Korean youth was also increased significantly in the north compared to the days of imperial subjugation under the Japanese. There was a 15-fold increase in enrollment in middle schools by 1947, the opening of numerable universities as well as special schools and colleges, and tens of thousands of study grants were given out each year by the revolutionary government to young students. The education of young students was improved in every capacity, as the vestiges of imperialist and bourgeois subjugation and indoctrination were removed from the Korean education system. The formation of the Democratic Youth League, which has held various names over the years and is now called the Socialist Patriotic Youth League, was a major victory for the Korean youth and for socialist construction in Korea in general. Things were far worse for the youth under American imperialism in South Korea. While the Workers' Party of Korea in the north went about the revolutionary cause of nation building and aided its youth, the democratically minded youth below the 38th parallel, when they attempted to form their own DYL, were mercilessly crushed. In 1947, when the North was expanding schooling and giving the youth a direct role in socialist construction, the South arrested thousands for democratic organizing and killed hundreds. After Comrade Kim Il-sung, when Comrade Kim Jong-il was the national leader, the youth position essentially only improved. Education institutions were consistently expanded, and the support network established for families allowed the Korean youth to live healthily in a supportive society. Their class education was also expanded. As Comrade Kim Jong-il wrote in his 1984 work titled On Further Developing Educational Work, quote, "We should not be complacent about our successes in working with young people, nor should we neglect the education of young people. Youth are the successors to the revolution. How to educate young people is a vital problem in deciding the future of the revolution and the destiny of the Korean nation. Only when it trains young people well, can a working class party defend and develop the successes achieved in the revolution and construction, and carry on the revolution through later generations." End quote. The Korean youth, positively engaged in the construction of Korean Juche-oriented socialism, are the successors of the revolution, and their Workers' Party of Korea has recognized this consistently. They are, as Comrade Kim Il-sung detailed, sensitive to the new, and they aspire after a new society with fervent revolutionary spirit, being willing to devote their knowledge with patriotic ardor to the development of the country and the prosperity of the nation. As some of us may be surprised to hear, this is a rare point that the Workers' Party of Korea and the bourgeois order here in the UK wholeheartedly agree on. The revolutionary potential of the youth is one of the most terrifying realities for the dictatorship of capital that dominates in the West, and especially here in Britain. It has to devote much time and effort into making sure, as best it can, that the British youth is politically impotent. That is why we are indoctrinated with the logic of capital from the very first stages of our education. We British youth are lied to at every level about the realities of history and of the society we live under in order to render us politically flaccid. But even this is not enough to fully sequester the revolutionary and democratic impulses of our youth. So on top of our ideological indoctrination, our impulses for change are funneled into useless youth voice or student voice programs, such as the East Sussex Youth Cabinet, which I am a member of. I was elected from my school with over 80% of the vote to a position where I meant to represent over 40,000 of the youth across East Sussex. However, the body itself has no power to represent these people at all. We meet with councillors and post Instagram stories to tick the youth representation box, but cannot even campaign against the bourgeois council that funds us. Nationally, our Labour government is moving a hollow measure to lower the voting age to 16, that's voting to an institution which fundamentally serves to reinforce British capitalism. Without a communist party, like the Workers' Party of Korea at the helm, the British working classes have no voice in Parliament, in government, or in the organisation of our country and nation in general. The revolutionary potential of the British working youths is sidelined in the extra-parliamentary sphere too. Below the age of 16, nearly no youths are politically organised, and among the sectionary, reactionary, right-wing and otherwise capitalist ideologies find a fervent breeding ground. When I was at secondary school, there were months wherein I couldn't go a day without feeling like I was a background actor in a scene of Jojo Rabbit, with the amount of fascist dog whistles and Nazi salutes I heard or saw. Above 16, the only form of political organisation most young working class students experience is the useless Zionist and bourgeois National Union of Students, which serves more as a self-congratulating nothing burger that gives out a monthly lottery to students who take its odious surveys than even a reformist youth organisation, let alone a proper revolutionary one like the DYL, now the Socialist Patriotic Youth League. If I won said lottery and put the money towards my own organising, I would do more in that moment for the British working youth than the modern NUS has done throughout its entire history. And even when this fails, and the youth do turn against their oppressors, when ones like myself join revolutionary organisations, when we organise to aid the national liberation struggle of oppressed nations such as Palestine and the Congo, and to oppose bourgeois imperialism, we too are brutally oppressed. The British police forces are becoming ever more militarised as crackdowns on the anti-imperialist movements, with members both young and old, expand even faster, in preparation for the war our ruling capitalists are pushing us towards in Europe. The result of all this is as clear as day. Our bourgeois establishment has been free to cut youth services unilaterally across the UK. Schools, able to serve their function of indoctrination without actually aiding the youth practically, are consistently underfunded, unlike in Korea, and teachers are consistently underpaid. Our NHS is abandoned, with both wings relating to all ages and those particularly pertaining to the youth and their families being shut down. The youth are particularly exploited, both through lower wage rates and with the lower minimum wage than adult workers in their wage slavery, and through the facetious work experience and young apprenticeship programs, which dupe young workers into giving up their labour time for little to most commonly no reward. We are lied to about this supposed oppression of the youth in revolutionary Korea, because if we knew the truth, no one among the youth would be able to deny socialism's superiority. While the Korean youth march forward towards communism and take their their destiny into their own hands, the British working youths are chained by class and capital to a life of exploitation, false consciousness and lies. We must learn from the struggle of the Korean communists in fighting for change here in Britain. Just as the Korean Revolutionary Army was built by the Korean youth and by its young students, the fighters of our revolutionary battles will be the British youth and young students. Without the support and valiant efforts of our youth, we will be left behind in the battle between socialism and barbarism will undoubtedly win. As Korea advances with Cholima speed, we, if we do not organise the British proletarian youth, will be left behind in the dustbin of history. As Comrade Kim Il-sung said clearly, the masses of young people are the vanguard fighters of the revolution. They are the most courageous in the revolution, and no revolutionary struggle can be victorious without their active participation. So I, a British youth myself, say resolutely, long live the Socialist Patriotic Youth League, long live the Workers' Party of Korea, and long live the revolutionary example they set for all of us. Thank you.
Wow, what an amazing comparative analysis of the youth movements here in Britain and the youth movements in Korea, led by members of the Workers' Party of Korea. I think it's so important that we highlight these differences and make these comparisons, not as a means of demoralizing us and demotivating us, but actually as a means to help us to understand and truly acknowledge the task, the big task we have at hand, and to push ourselves to have that revolutionary optimism to forge ahead with this challenge of seeing how can we develop our youth, how can we bring a youth movement as vibrant, anywhere near even a fraction as vibrant and as principled as the Korean youth movements. So let's give another warm applause for Ossian.